founders of the group. One's joining us by video, one's joining us on Skype. You can see him down in the corner there. They're going to just share a few of their thoughts on having made it 10 years and their experiences in the industry. And I'm going to introduce them one at a time. We've already met Philippe, Owen Rogers. Who are you working with these days?
And or not.
Okay. Eugene Nisker, Steve Adolf, Paul Culling. Whoa. Is that me?
No, that's
Oh. Michael Bax in there, and Jazz Madur, who's going to be on YouTube. So maybe we'll start with Michael. Oh, all right. I bow to superior knowledge. Philippe, given that you're the one responsible for all of this.
So I wanted to tell how it actually started. In 2003 or 4, I decided to go to the big Agile conference. I forgot if it was in Salt Lake City or Denver or someplace like that. And over there, I ran into a very tall guy. I said, "Hey, I know you. You're from Vancouver." That was Steve. And then we thought, "Oh, this is interesting. Maybe we should see how many people from Vancouver there are at the conference." So I write to Brian Marek, who was the chair of the conference, say, "Hey, Brian, can you look up in your database of registrants who's from Vancouver?" I said, "Oh, well, we don't have the address." I said, "Okay, you have the phone number, so look for anybody with 604-250 and 778. And he says, "Oh, yep, that's easy. I have 3 names, Steve Adolf, Philippe Truchten, and Michael Vax." So we thought with Steve, okay, this is not a great start, you know. So we decided for another approach. Steve said, "Oh, I have a buddy, I just finished writing a book with him, Alistair Coburn, and he's pretty, interesting guy, and maybe we should invite him." So I say, "Well, but we have no money." So we scrounged a little bit of money. I convinced the burgeoning Agile Alliance to give us $500. Well, that was not quite enough to pay for the trip from wherever he lives, Salt Lake City, actually. And we would save on the hotel by having him on Steve's coach somewhere on Beach Avenue at the time. And then I booked a room and I thought, okay, well, UBC, it's not exactly well located. Let's try to convince SFU to give us a room at SFU Arbor Center. So I booked a little room that would fit 25 people. And then I sent an invite. So we gathered all the email addresses that we could scrunch. I was the chair of the IEEE computer chapter, so I had access to that list. And Jeff Hewson had the Software Productivity Center list. So altogether, we had probably 500 or 600 email addresses. And I sent an invitation saying, "Oh, there will be a presentation by Alistair Coburn on these new fancy things called Agile at SFU Arbor Center." And then I remember I said, "Please RSVP." Because I thought, well, I need to know how many cookies and how much coffee I need to buy. 12 people, 15 people. Well, the next day, I had already 30 answers. So I called SFU, I said, "Can I have a bigger room, like one that can accommodate 50? Well, 3 days later, we had 172 people who had responded. So I needed to borrow the biggest room SFU Arbor Center could give us for Alistair's presentation. Actually, 150 something people showed up that night, not all those who RSVP'd. We had to tap on the shoulder of some other buddies to pay for more coffee and cookies because my email said there would be coffee and cookies, so I had to provide for 170 people. And we told the people that let's try to create a little organization. If you want to we'll create a separate mailing list, not reusing the one from the Software Productivity Center, nor the one from IEEE. We'll create a specific one for these kind of things, and we'll organize something. So that's how it got started. And then the thing took roots. We had a few other presentations, and we found other ways of funding the thing without having to even ask for some membership. We never asked for any membership, actually. actually. And then a few months later, we used to gather on Mainland Avenue, on that bar outside there, and we sort of say, well, let's be a bit more serious. If we need to handle money and organize local conference, we need to have a legal entity to do that. So that's how we created Agile Vancouver. Now the government didn't want the term Agile Vancouver as the name of a society, so we had to scratch our head and go by their rules as to how descriptive the name should be. So we ended up with VAMUG, the Vancouver Agile Method Users Group. And we sketched some constitution and some bylaws, and we all signed it on a sunny day, and we were 9 or 10 of us signatories. I still have the original document that we filed with the government. Okay, so that's how it all got started.
And it's still going. And it still has the original constitution. And I remember that very first meeting. You wanna take the next one? Or?
I was just going to say, out of curiosity, how many people were at that Alistair Coburn talk?
Oh.
So this is the 10th conference. How many people have been to one of the conferences that we had that were up on 12th and Cambie? What's the name of the venue?
The Plaza.
The Plaza 500, which is no more. Okay. I don't know. I haven't been to some of the more recent ones, so I don't know where they are.
Well, they've been here. They've been at the Renaissance for a couple of years. I'm not quite sure where we'll be next year.
So I think one of the important parts of formalizing it as a society was that very first conference that we put on. Philippe guaranteed the entire conference with his personal credit card. And then we got money coming in, and then it's like, well, where does it go? So it goes to Philippe. And then we needed somewhere to put this money so that we could seed and we could pay for monthly user group meetings and that kind of thing. But at the time, I remember thinking, Philippe, you're an idiot.
My accountant told me so too. He said, what? You know, there was something like $20,000 of money that, you know,
yeah, I mean, it wasn't an arbitrary amount of money, and it was, we had no idea if people were going to show up, but, you know, but that was sort of the commitment Philippe had to, you know, developing this community. So.
Since then, I can say that I have special relationship with American Express because the biggest you know, charge I ran there on my month, I saw there on my monthly statement was 100,000 something because after Philips, you know, a few years, it was my card that was on the line.
So who got the airline points?
Maybe what we should do is let Michael say his piece next, and then we'll run Jazz's video, and then the rest of the panel can talk and reminisce and share their thoughts. All right. Michael, can you hear us? Can we hear you? We can't hear you. All right. Give us a second here.
Out of curiosity, how many of you have been to the Agile Alliance conference? Yeah. And for those of you here, how many of you, this is your first Agile Vancouver Lunch and Do conference? Okay. That's impressive.
Okay, Michael, can you say something, say hello? So we can, you have to speak, so we can actually hear you. We're trying to see if the sound works. No.
But how many of you have had the experience that when you're in a teleconference, it takes about 10 minutes of your meeting to get all the technology?
All right, hold on for a minute, Michael.
So maybe you can.
Sure. My name's Owen Rogers. I ran my first extreme programming team in 2003, It was at an organization that was using a waterfall process, and so getting permission to run this experiment using all of these really crazy practices was not that easy to come by, but the results were dramatic for us. It was really transformational. We were the only team that was able to deliver on time and on budget on that project. That, for me, set the seed, made me really interested in this new movement that was happening. I joined ThoughtWorks. I consulted there for 6 years as an Agile coach, helping different enterprise teams implement various software methods within their workplaces. And there were a few things two key things which came out of that, both of which were touched on in Philippe's talk, and I think have kind of set the path for me going forward. One was really recognizing that cycle time was absolutely essential, and helping organizations focus on reducing their cycle time. Specifically, how do we get working software into production as quickly as possible? Trying to bring those cycle times back down, going from a few months to a month to a week, or delivering that software continuously. So that's been a core focus for me, with a big interest in DevOps. The other side of it, the other observation was that a lot of software is based on unvalidated assumptions. It's somebody's idea. It sounds like a great idea. There may be some preliminary testing, maybe with focus groups, but often the ideas are still pretty unvalidated and don't actually get effectively validated until that software is tested within the market. So borrowing concepts from Lean Startup, how can we do more experimentation and validation upfront and iteratively through our development processes so that we can move in the direction of finding product market fit. It's also a key area of focus. For the last 8 years I've been with a startup. Those were two of the key principles that have guided us. One is releasing software every week. Now we release software several times per day, and also doing a lot of experimentation, validation, A/B testing. We do a lot of work these days with Mechanical Turk to validate product concepts within a broader group beyond just trying to do focus groups. So these are some of the areas of interest for me. So not a lot of this is covered within the traditional Agile canon, so within the core methodologies of Scrum and extreme programming, etc. And so other things that have come up, such as DevOps or Lean Startup, have been key areas of interest for me, but have been less of a focus of the main Agile movement.
Okay, so let's try running Jazz's video.
Well, good morning everybody from Luxembourg. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the junta for still being around, and thank you for asking me about my Agile journey during the past decade. I'm glad to see that we're all somewhat relevant, and that I'm sorry that I can't be with you. This video is Plan B. I travel quite a bit these days through Europe, Middle East, and the Asian region, and I hear the term Agile pretty much all the time. And more recently, it's the Agile mindset, which seems to be talked about in our mode. Agile thinking is clearly rising up the corporate hierarchy, and it's not just something for nerds anymore. This, I think, has a lot to do with the recognition of a very good marriage that exists between market leadership through innovation and Agile's inherent mechanisms for rapid results. So we have seen no shortage of technical innovation. But in the few minutes that I have today, what I would like to talk about is how Agile represents social innovation and the ways and how it's changed the way we collaborate. I think it's changed the way we collaborate in 3 ways. First of all, it's very inclusive. Secondly, it's results-oriented. And thirdly, I think the social innovation that Agile provides has broader application for creativity all the way up in the hierarchy. So on Agile being inclusive, well, it's come out of the...
One moment, please.
innovation that Agile provides. It has broader application for creativity all the way up in the hierarchy. So on Agile being inclusive, well, it's come out of the innovation of tools and collaboration infrastructure. And we bring all these tools and aspects together so that we can have distributed multidisciplinary teams. People on projects can have direct input into decision making, estimating and planning. And then we also insist on transparency and daily accountability. So with such rich communications going on, it's no surprise that we've seen good results. And that's a great deal of, and well done, the 17 manifesto signatories in 2001, they managed to tap into and unleash technical creativity that is both results and usability oriented and fun at the same time. On Agile being results oriented, I used to wonder about Agile and think, well, maybe it pandered too much to the Gen Xers and the millennials. You know, it was way too instant gratification oriented. It had too short an attention span, suffered from ADD, and I thought it would last but as long as those faded yellow stickies seemed to. However, Agile has proved to be sufficiently goal and vision oriented that it has actually managed to span strategic, architectural, enterprise level views and look into the future to produce stuff. So yeah, we can see that it safely scales, but we can still organize our teams in a way that we maintain that small team neighborhood touch and maintain the pace for rapid build, test, learn culture that we've adapted, built. So thirdly, in terms of Agile's broader applications, that show and adapt aspect is applicable throughout the organization. And I think the focus on risk management, getting things done and producing results is a very fine mix that can be used into the boardroom. And some of the portfolio management work that we've been doing lately is seeing a kind of an acceptance of that type of thinking. And I think Agile will always be looking for better ways of working, and we will incorporate these ideas. We've seen ideas come in from Lean, Kanban, Kaizen. So any better way of working will keep us relevant and keep us thinking about how we can produce results more effectively. So the textbook for the method, I think, will always stay open. Anyway, so all the best for the next 10 years. I'll post this little thing on my blog, jazzmatter.blogspot.com. These days in Luxembourg, you can find me directly. You just have to ask. It's a small country with about 500,000 people over 50 square miles, 50 by 50 square kilometers actually. It's not difficult to find people. Otherwise, I'll be collaborating with Agile Partner, drawing on Scott Ambler's work on Disciplined Agile, and looking to Joanna Rothman for portfolio management ideas. Okay, stay cool, stay well, make something useful, and Eddie, as we say in Luxembourgish, be well.
All right, now let's see if we can connect with Michael, who's impatiently waiting.
Where's Michael these days? We'll find out.
Munich?
Okay. So this time he went for fun.
There he is.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go.
Perfect.
So what's your 2 cents worth on the history of Agile Vancouver and your initial involvement and where you think these are going?
Okay, is it my turn?
Yeah, definitely hear you.
Hello, Agile Vancouver, and congratulations on 10th conference. It's really amazing that this thing started more than 10 years ago. So I was asked to say a couple words on how was my journey in Agile started, as well as where do I see Agile going. Well, my journey to Agile started when I was a very unhappy man, managing a big waterfall project, and despite my really excellent skills in printing huge Microsoft project schedules that I can put on my wall, project was not going actually anywhere. So at that point, I discovered Agile and was happy to meet this group who started Agile Vancouver. And software development kind of became fun again. When I was leaving to Europe about 3 years ago, I was working in another company in Vancouver where we were doing Ruby development, and kind of I looked around at the guys around me and realized that I actually need to teach these guys what waterfall is, because they are working Agile and don't understand how else possible to do software development. So I think Agile Vancouver did quite a good job of moving Agile development forward, and it was really fun to work with this group of talented people who volunteer their time for such a good cause. Couple of interesting things that I see are ahead of Agile. What I'm personally interested in two things. One is how to move from Agile software development to Agile business, because it's still quite difficult to reconcile need of business from accounting perspective, for financial perspective, for predictability, and the way we're doing Agile development is not always easily fit together. But there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in this area. Lean startup, of course, is applying Lean principle, Agile principle to business, and definitely it's applicable beyond just startup business. The other interesting thing I think is, let's see what's happening with Internet of Things, because Internet of Things really transforming all these manufacturing companies into software development companies. And I think it will be quite fun and interesting experience to see how the companies who are used to much more strict processes and slower processes than in software development will adjust. And I think Agile is really going to play a big role there. Okay, have a great conference, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
My turn?
Go for it.
Okay, Mike mentioned that he was very unhappy man when he started his Agile journey. I can say that I was much happier then than I am now. Because during these 10 years, I somehow realized that, well, Agile, Lean, whatever, nothing can save us. So, my view on our industry is rather disappointing, if not depressing. I started my career in in information technology in dark ages, as Philip put it. And I've been everywhere, starting from a developer and writing code for more than 20 years. But more and more I see that the speed of development that Philip talked about gets way beyond our ability to catch up and our ability to do a good job. And you know that everyone wants to do a good job, and for us, for developers, it is looking at the long term. Because we know very well that software evolves, and we know very well that if we cut corners today, we will pay for it tomorrow. Now, look at two sides of a business, service business versus product business. If we are in services, we know that we are bound by either fixed cost contracts, and their majority, or even if it's time and material, it is essentially fixed price contracts. And we know that projects are always bigger than they seem in the beginning when we negotiated the money, so we need to cut corners. And that's okay, because we will deliver our software and move to our next project. But we are somewhat dissatisfied with the quality of what we do, because we know that the guy who is going to maintain it will look at us and think, what a morons. Now, if we are in a product business, chances are we are develop software for our own company, work for a business side of the company, and this is not much better, because well, I sit in executive rooms for many, many years in different organizations, and I see the same picture. My aspirations as Chief Information Officer or Chief Technical Officer are drastically different from other CTRs. I am interested in long term because I know that if I will cut corners all the time, then I will pay by low team morale, slowing development delivery down the road, bus factor because low morale leads to people leaving, etc., etc. So I'm naturally interested in long term. Chief Financial Officer is interested in reporting 3 months results. Chief Marketing Officer is interested in sales. Chief Operating Officer is interested in stuff working today. All of them are interested in long term, don't get me wrong. But they are put in a situation where the situation requires them to think about today more about than about tomorrow. So as a result of that, yes, we have iterations now, it's better. Yes, we are thinking about human capital, but tell me, how many of you, let's show hands, how many of you looked at your code written a year ago and thought, was I really that stupid? or if I only knew then what I know now. So we need time to learn what we are doing, to reflect on it, to run a few experiments. How many of us are given this time? Probably very few. So here I am, where I am.
Eugene is known as the good time founder.
I was just thinking about being able to read or understand the code I wrote a year ago. I don't know, how many of you remember APL? Yeah, I used to be an APLer. It was brilliant if you could actually remember what you did a day ago with APL. That's why we called it a write once language. My Agile journey, it's kind of interesting. I never thought that I sort of made the flip because it just always seemed the right thing to do. I mean, there was Agile long before a group of people needed an excuse to write off a ski weekend and wrote up a manifesto. I remember, most of the projects that I might have been exceptionally privileged. A lot of the projects that I was able to work on, we worked on some kind of iterative or incremental model. Even though ostensibly some of them were quote unquote waterfall. We had sashimi models. I don't know how many of you know that one. That's just basically the overlapping waterfalls. We had iterative. I was a huge fan of RUP. We just stripped it right down, but we were doing iterative delivery. So we were having a lot of good success on that. In the mid-90s, there was the so-called pattern languages of programming. You remember in the 90s, patterns became a super hip thing. It was very fashionable. Some of you even might remember that I was making some good coin and paying off my mortgage by explaining the Gang of Four book to people, which was so badly written. I always sent them Christmas cards. But I also started getting involved in the patterns community and ran into a couple of guys like Mike Beadle, Ken Schwaber, and was reviewing a paper they were putting, a collection of patterns they were putting together called Scrum, or Scrum, a method for patterns for hyper-productive development. And that was back in about 1996, and I was going, okay, this is some cool ideas. Yeah, why don't we do some of this? Oh, I like that one. I'm not sure about this Scrum Master person, though. And then in 2000, I was writing a book with Alistair Coburn, and I was at home, and I get this phone call. Steve, you're not going to believe what we did. Oh, man, what, Alistair? Well, we all, a bunch of us, we got together, and we were trying to basically harmonize our different lightweight Agile methods. So you have to remember back at this time, Alistair was a proponent of a lightweight method called Crystal. Schwaber, Sutherland, Mike Beadle, they had a lightweight method called Scrum. There was Mary Popinick, and they were all trying to come up with some unifying theme, sort of the universal lightweight methodology. And they couldn't, so we started rattling off this cool thing they signed and called the Agile Manifesto, explaining it to me, and I'm going, okay, that sounds cool. Like, that's kind of what most people do to get software out, isn't it? So I wasn't quite, I don't want to say I wasn't impressed, but I just thought, but yeah, that's how you do it, right? This is software. This is how we kind of do things. But what I think was really great about that is, first of all, the Agile Manifesto made testers first-class citizens finally. But it also started really focusing on the social side of software development. It started saying, if you look at the so-called first article of the manifesto, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, it highlighted the importance of people. Now, theoretically, we've known this for years. You go back to Barry Bohm, software engineering economics, you can demonstrate that the social factors on your team outweigh the technical factors almost by 10 to 1. And if you think about your personal experiences on different teams that you've been on, did it really matter what technical practices were you using? Think of the productive teams, the ones you really got things out on. Was it the technical practices, or was it the social relationships you had with the people on the team and your stakeholders? My experience has been, it's been the social practices. But where we were in the 90s is that we were, as Philippe was saying, we were trying to build these processes, these big complex business processes, where effectively we were substituting morons. You would be able to go to the commodity store and buy one architect, one developer, and one tester. And we really began to realize that people are the essence of software development. The social elements of software development are the key economic driver. And that's where the speed comes from. The speed at which people can communicate and work together. And we were actually, what direction we were heading in was we're putting technical impediments to having that occurring. So I think this is one of the big mindset shifts that Agile has made. Why Philippe sometimes refers to me is I was Philippe's doctoral student, one of Philippe's doctoral students at UBC. And when I proposed my research, I thought, oh my God, I am going to get laughed out of the engineering school because I was proposing doing research into the social dynamics of software teams. And my fear was, when I would be walking into my dissertation proposal, was I'm going to get some crusty old engineer going, this ain't real engineering. Where's your numbers, boy? What it turns out, the reception I got was very positive, to the point where the director of the school is going, this is important research, because this is what's holding back our profession, is understanding how people collaborate and work together, because that's where the speed comes from. So I think this is the big thing that Agile's really opened us up to, is really thinking about the social relationships of people and the social technical nature of software development. So I'm very optimistic for the future, because we're thinking along these lines, and small regional conferences like this. Look at yourselves here. You're here because you have a passion for trying to do things better. You want to share ideas with your colleagues. You want to learn, how could we possibly make things better? How do I make my life better? How do I make my company's life better? How do we actually create better jobs for our colleagues and actually make more money doing it? That's a pretty neat thought. I mean, that's what this is really all about. How do we create better jobs for ourselves and make more money doing it? I like that. The dark cloud, I'm not as pessimistic as you do. But I do see the dark clouds I see on the horizon for us, or the concerns that I have, is that as Agile is now becoming much more mature, we're falling into that same spot we were in the 1990s. It's kind of fun that this is Marty McFly week, or last week was Marty McFly week, right? The date that for Back to the Future. And we're kind of having that experience, because I do see that in the last few years within the Agile community, some are starting to put a heavy emphasis on the technical practices. And we're forgetting that it's the social dynamics, and that you cannot isolate the technical practices and then have the social adapt to it. It's holistic. Both the social systems and the technical systems have to be addressed holistically. So I do see positive things, but I think we have to be aware that as this discipline begins to mature, becomes basically just part of the landscape, just part of the good practices we have for delivering high quality services and making money, that we do not get overly focused on the practices. I've seen too many of my clients where they are building maturity models that measure compliance with practices versus outcomes. Thank you.
So, the very last statement about measuring compliance with practices versus outcomes notwithstanding. The thing about technical practices, and I will say this, I'll explain later why, but I don't really have much of a foot to stand on when talking about technical practices. But my view into this is there's this pendulum, right? And so the marketing and acceptance and adoption of the Scrum framework really brought it away from some of those technical practices. And people going in and hammering on technical practices is a foundation to allow something like Scrum to be effective. And so I have no problem with people out there hammering on technical practices because it's important. Anyways, so my story is kind of unique. So I've worked for a company called Version 1 for 9-something years. We're a Agile management platform for managing release, from product planning, release planning, sprint planning, that kind of thing. And I actually joined Version 1 to start up their marketing department and built a marketing team using Scrum within the marketing team. And when talking about, Version 1 was an Agile company. We did a talk a couple of years ago, my brother and I, who's the CTO, on a decade of done, 10 years in Version 1. So from the very first story card, we built our product using Agile methods. And building a marketing team within a company like that was really interesting because you get traditional marketing people that come in that are used to long release cycles, and they've got lots of time to prepare, and all this like big bang feature release, talking with analysts and that kind of thing, and down to where we were releasing kind of major releases every quarter, and then doing other stuff more broadly. So it was a kind of an interesting introduction for me. I think what I learned along the way is, and kind of touches on a couple of things that people have talked about, is Agile being an umbrella term over a lot of different methods and practices. The core being this continuous experimentation, continuous learning, and the idea of inspecting and adapting. I worked with a customer at Lockheed Martin, 8 years ago, who was implementing Agile methods on the F-35 project. And his big thing about implementing Agile methods in an organization like that was, a key thing was attrition, because there are some people that need to be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And when you're using Agile methods and all these different things we're talking about, there's a lot of thinking involved. You need to be able to look and inspect and adapt. So we've got this umbrella term. What I found over the 10 years, and so for 5 years I worked in that marketing department. For the last 5 years I've worked in our Partnership Alliances group. So I work with all sorts of different consulting groups all over the world that are going in and helping organizations adopt Agile. And what I see from my vantage point is, you've got these tribes within the Agile community. So you've got the kind of lean Kanban people say, no, we're not Agile, we're Kanban. And we've got these people say, no, we're not this, we're that. And part of that is driven by consultants out there trying to sell whatever they're selling. but it doesn't do a whole lot of good for the peak organizations doing it. The other big thing that I've seen over 10 years is going from organizations, a team within an organization, trying to implement Agile methods, whatever that may be, in a sort of covert way, or organizations, well, we'll try it with this team and see if it works. So at a team level, to now we've got organizations saying we're going to implement Agile methods across our organization. So instead of, like from a product perspective, instead of dealing customers with like 100 and 200 people working on these projects, we're dealing with customers with like 8,000, 10,000, 20,000 people. And the ability to adapt what a single team can do together, this whole idea that yes, co-location is the best. Yes, face-to-face communication is the best. All these, you can outline everything that is the best way of delivering, but then you have to modify it to the real world. And then from a kind of moving forward perspective, what I see is you've got, whether it's a team level or some parts of organizations that get really good at building things. So you've got, whether you're doing iterations with Scrum and you're able to deliver stuff, it's figuring out what you should be building. And so that's sort of upstream. I consider it upstream. So in the product planning and the product discovery side. So you get into some of the lean startup stuff there, sometimes into like a story mapping thing, Jeff Patton and Dave Hussman. So discovering because you can build a lot of crap really fast, right? So what should we build? And then on the downstream is how do we get it into the hands of our customers faster? And that gets to the cycle time stuff. So what we've really seen is this from the DevOps side. I've always considered that. So recently, DevOps has really been kind of, I think, ops-centric. And so what we're working really hard on is giving our customers the ability to extend Agile into the DevOps space. And we're calling it like unified DevOps, but I don't know if that's it resonates with people. I don't know if it's a marketing kind of term.
Sounds cool.
Sounds cool. But anyways, but actually, we look at DevOps as an extension of Agile, right? So there is a whole tribe involved with the DevOps space. But what we see is the ability to be able to look at what you're building and know where it is anywhere in the build pipeline all the way to the customer. I could probably ramble on for a long time about stuff.
So we have a lot of brain power sitting at this table out here. Anybody want to start firing some questions at them?
I'm working with the Scaled Agile framework, and I've been following a lot about this. There's a little bit of controversy that this is just another form of waterfall. What are your thoughts on Scaled Agile and this whole waterfall controversy?
Geez, where's Jennifer?
Where is Jennifer?
Well, I think we should get these people's opinion on it.
Okay.
Not somebody from Scaled Agile framework.
Yeah, I guess she doesn't.
Well, I'll speak to Scaled Agile since I've been actually involved with it quite a bit. From my point of view, it's another model. It's a framework. It is a very good framework, and I've worked with it a lot and had quite a bit of success with it. Had some less than successful deployments of it. To say, oh, it's just another version of waterfall, I think is a bit of a specious argument. You can distort any method you want. You can take Scrum and do horrors with it. You can take SAFe, you can take DAD and do horrors with it. I think it's got, and you can do many good things. It's got a lot of good ideas. It's got a lot of good practices in it. We've definitely experienced success with it. But again, you have to, where I think you fall into. How many of you have heard this cargo cult? Everyone, is that the term cargo cult? Cargo cult, the term cargo cult is very fashionable in the Agile community for describing deployments of methodologies where people are just specifically focusing on the technical practices. I don't mean to say that the technical practices are irrelevant, but it is always the balance. You've got to look at the social, you've got to look at the technical. You also have to look at the context of your organization. Why are we actually deploying this? Why are we pursuing SAFe? Why are we considering using DAD in our organization? What is the real objective here that we want to achieve? Because those are, I often find, big factors in it. So I don't know if that really gets to the answer, the core of your question, but I would say that, no, it's not, I've heard all kinds of things leveled at SAFe. Oh, it's just the Rupp boys are back again. Well, yeah, Dean, of course. But it's SAFe is unsafe, and as Paul was pointing out here, unfortunately our industry has become very much segmented where there's a lot of competing practices out there, and there's a lot of money associated with certification and training, and everyone is trying to do a bit of artificial differentiation of how their method is better than somebody else's. So.
Sorry.
Yeah, you've got to take this with a grain of salt.
I was going to say, stick a pin in that one. We'll run a panel on that next year. We'll get a few people to contribute their thoughts and opinions and hopefully not get into some fisticuffs over it.
I think, just on the whole SAFe thing, I think, so clearly SAFe is winning the branding war for scaling Agile. Dean and crew did a really good job of kind of packaging up a lot of things. I think that what Scrum did for the kind of project level thing, where a project manager or a dev team lead can look at that, the Scrum framework and the pictures, they totally get it. I think a CIO of a very large organization looks at the big picture, the SAFe calls the big picture, and sees things he recognizes or she recognizes, and sees it and says, yeah, I get that. So I think that they've got the most traction. They're out doing all their certifications. Dean is the first person to say it's a framework, and here's a framework, and you modify it to the context of your organization. The danger, I think, as with all the things, is that as soon as you get so many degrees of separation away from the practitioners and the people that have actually done it, you get a lot of people going out and training on it, being trainers and coaches, and they don't have the ability to look at the framework and modify it to the context of the organization. So that's just something you have to be really careful of, like with anything else.
Maybe yes, you could have a shootout Nexus versus SAFe.
Well, it did cross my mind because we've got SAFe and DAD scheduled across from each other. We'll see how many people end up in one room versus the other.
Oh. I can see some strong arming taking place.
Unless Jennifer and Mark wanted to, they were discussing at one point combining their sessions.
Yeah, just to be clear, so I'm one of the co-creators of DAD, right? They're complementary concepts. They're actually orthogonal concepts. One is a scaling framework, and one is a process decision framework. So those are two different things. They're actually complementary. That's why Jennifer and I actually sit beside each other.
So you guys any final thoughts to wrap up? We can need a few minutes of the AGM time, don't worry.
The one final thought I will give is, remember, this is all about, Paul brought it up, this is all about balance, right? The whole reason the Agile Manifesto came about was basically, as Jim Highsmith would say, was to restore balance to the term methodology and make it credible again. The pendulum was swinging very, very heavily towards process engineering, towards technical practices. It swung back towards the social. Now we're trying to find that right balance, and that balance point is always changing. That's the whole emphasis on. That's the whole emphasis on experimenting. What is that the balance point for your organization that works for you? What enables you to get speed in your organization?
And the waterfall has been extremely vilified, but actually we do all this iteration and agile stuff because we are unable to do a good job at waterfall. But the waterfall remains the gold standard. If we were able to do it, we would be pretty good.
Now that to me sounds like a really good final word. No? Sorry, go ahead.
I was actually just going to ask, we talked a little bit this morning about how Agile Vancouver, or what Agile Vancouver has done over the last 10 years. Any thoughts as to how Agile Vancouver could best serve the community over the next 10 years?
What?
That's probably for Susan, because none of us are acting anymore, and Susan, Rob, you are, and a few people here are acting junta, so we are here to help, but basically it's a question to you guys and to the community.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing for a community like this. So there was a number of people that got things going. There was actually, unlike so many things like this, there were people that stepped in and continued it on because, frankly, I think a lot of us were tired. And we have, I have 2 kids that are now 2 teenagers and a full-time job. So like we got to go in and pass it on. And so in the next 10 years, who are you going to cultivate to pass it on to?
Sure. I guess the question was more asked in the context of, as a member of the organizing committee, asking you guys, representing the rest of the room, if you had any opinions on that. But that's something we can explore further.
I guess the rest of the day we will give you an answer to that.
Personally, I think one of the challenges that an organization like Agile Vancouver will face is that Agile has frankly become mainstream. When we started this group, it was a bit of a fringe thing, and it was something that ended up having quite a bit of momentum around it and crossed the chasm. So that meant a lot of the people that were involved at an early age or at an early stage and coming out to events were early adopters. And so if it's now, if the focus is now appealing to the early majority or the late majority, the kind of content might be different, but how do you maintain momentum with that type of membership?
Just sort of to build on the thought like there, as we were saying, when we started, this was kind of a fringe element. We were looking at organizations, the focus was on small development teams, 7 plus or minus 2 people, or maybe a couple of development teams. And now we're working in organizations. Now we're working in organizations where we're talking about transforming entire departments. We've got several thousand people. I think the challenge for us moving forward is twofold. One, this has got to be seen much more than just an IT thing. Most organizations that have been working on, okay, you IT guys, you're doing Agile, that's very cute. Okay, that's good. Go off and do that. Now, but don't interfere with getting the real business done here. The other is that leads to the whole issue of change management. It's something we really haven't taken a look at. This is becoming much more important as we move into the organizations. We are fundamentally changing the way organizations do business. It's no longer just how do we decrease our defect rates, how do we decrease costs. This is how do we compete based on time. A lot of organizations just aren't not sure yet how we do that. I think that's the next thing. How do we, within our organization, start creating the idea that what the point of Agile is to enable us to compete on time. There's a whole set of change management issues. And this is not just an IT thing. This is actually going up the whole value stream. I think that's the next big challenge for us.
And I totally agree, and this is actually where my pessimistic view is coming from, because we are not ready to take responsibility for the life and death that we are creating in the society around us. Philip mentioned about Internet of Things. That's when my car is calling my kettle saying, hey, I'm approaching, so you better start doing something. Or when my kettle is calling my pacemaker saying, hey, he's done with his coffee, ready to prepare for his next activity, so you better do something with his heart rate. Well, we know very well how many bugs we have in our software in production, right? So let me, at the end, give you my most optimistic dream or most optimistic hope. It is that I somehow managed to die before all this thing will.
He's Russian. I am not going for a beer with you. So I think that when you thinking about Agile Vancouver in 10 years, I think there's a decision to be made by the organizers in the community. Is it going to be a user group that focuses on sort of educating in that scale side, you know? So the traditional stuff, or is it going to be a user group that focuses on crazy new things that people are doing? This is what I'm doing. Again, like going back to that team level, and what are the new things that, you know, somebody can do a talk and they're like, wow, that is totally insane, that will never work at my company. But from those things come change. So is it like a forward-thinking early adopter group, or is it more of a mainstream?
Maybe we'll shake it up and try both. It's interesting your comment though about things moving into the mainstream. I'm wondering if that's where we're seeing more people asking, what is Agile? Because 10, 15 years later, you can still pack an Agile 101. No problem. It's fascinating.
I would like to even just, just as a personal point of view, I'd like to even challenge the idea that Agile has gone mainstream. I believe everyone is aware of it. And certainly a large number of organizations claim they have become Agile. I'm going into some very large, the classic Fortune 100 organizations, and it is still almost like, holy moly, I've just walked back 20 years. I don't have enough data to support or refute that claim, but I'm cautious about using the term Agile has gone mainstream.
I would say awareness has
Awareness.
gone mainstream.
Sure.
Adoption, maybe not so much.
So
We're going to need to wrap it up in
Okay.
a couple minutes, guys.
we asked how many people this was their first Agile Vancouver meeting, and a lot of people put up their hands. And I can say that I was on the board of the Agile Alliance that puts on the big Agile conference every year. And that is a conference of 2,000 people, 1,700 people. And it is shocking every year. The majority of people have never been to one of those conferences, even though there's a lot of people that go to there and say, oh, we see the same people. Yeah, it's a very small group. But we don't realize how big, we live in our own little small world, and we think that Agile's everywhere, but if you go to conferences like this, or even the big one, there are tons of people that are just starting out.
There are at least 50 million software developers worldwide, at least. This is a big industry.
Before Agile, Philip mentioned object-oriented. Let me tell you that I'm interviewing lots of people, and believe it or not, 1 out of 10 can give me a good example of polymorphism.
Okay. And on that uplifting note,
okay, maybe it's a good way to end it. So you had raised a hand of people that did know what Agile the first time here. So let's try and get a little more information or data out of it. So raise a hand, who here is like at the developer, team lead level, involved with Agile? Who's like a scrum master, a project manager, or a program manager? Who's like above that?
How about beside that?
Beside.
Anybody here from marketing? Other than.
What about QA? Analysts? Yeah.
So I think you're missing the obvious question. Who's here from the business?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get around.
Anyone? Oh, could you step outside, please?
Get in here.
But in all seriousness, that might be part of the problem, about the awareness and the adoption.
It's still very much, like I said, I'm still concerned that it's very much seen as an IT science project.
Your point about stepping back 20 years in firms, so just to be very clear, I've seen nothing but that in the last 8 years I've been in Vancouver, just to be very clear about that. And I've run the SDM team back in the 90s. I understand and have awareness of IT, but I deliberately come with the business focus because I try and bridge the gap between business and IT, because there is a gap. Still, just mind-blowing, but just still. So where are the business leaders in this conference? We need to get some of those in.
Well, because one of the things that when you talk from the business side, and I made the comment about trying to hire marketing people that could understand delivering even every 3 months. But one of the things that we identified on the Agile Alliance board is the biggest impediment to massive scale Agile adoption was accounting. Right? So the whole CapEx, OpEx thing. So the business side is that kind of thing that's where we need to move.
The Agile Alliance actually has a special interest group or something
Yeah.
now for financial.
Yeah, so trying to communicate with FASB, which is the organizing body for how accounting rules are, because you've got accountants and CFOs sitting there saying, I don't know how to account for this, and I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah. And that's the topic for another conference.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good one, because
Yeah, I
that
think
was,
so.
my last client, that was a massive, massive impediment.
But if you think of the classic value chain, at back of it, marketing, sales, operations, IT, all of legal, all of those constructs are geared around a more traditional classic management way of working, all of them. So it's not, I agree with you on the financial, the accounts, that huge issue potentially, but you have the same barrier in other domains of business.
There's one, just one, I'm gonna, one last comment. Just I keep citing a previous client. It's a very well-known vendor of financial services. You all probably have one in your wallets. One of the things that's starting to get some movement in the industry, again, more often I'm going to be Eugene's yang to his yin, is the traditional companies are scared absolutely bleepless by the upstarts. Large financial services companies are not scared of other financial services companies. They're scared of Amazon. They're scared of PayPal. They're scared of Apple. Of Google. Terrified of Google. And companies now disappear very, very quickly. Who remembers this company called Research in Motion? Right? Kodak. Companies disappear fast. And that's what's scary. So that may actually be, getting the message out that to compete against Google, we have to be able to make decisions faster. We have to be able to get new products out there faster than they can. So I think that's the thing, that's the motivation that's going to start happening in a lot of companies. And we've got to make this argument in financial terms, even though we are working against the CapEx. Start making this argument in financial terms to the business, saying this is what it brings to you. Yes, it's not about just dropping our development costs. It's about being able to compete faster, because that's the only way we're going to survive in this environment.
And on that note, we really will have to draw a line in it.